Live audience live.
Rise. Have good news. There's no one that I know of that has passed away. There was a member of the city in the past 2 weeks, so just have a moment of silent reflection before we begin this important meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag
Allegiance to
of the
the
United
flag
States
of
of
the United
America,
States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please look to the roll call for the city council meeting, November 25th, 2013.
Mr. President, if I might too, I'm asked to remind everyone to see if their mics are on. turned
Make
on.
sure yours is on, please. Thank you.
Mine, I have, thank you, Mr. President. For the meeting of 11:25, Councilor Hutchinson is absent. Councilor Jones,
He's here.
he is here. Councilor Sullivan,
Present.
Councilor Cameron,
Is here.
Councilor Connell,
Present.
Councilor Cronin,
Here.
Councilor Darragh. Here. Councilor Earls is absent. Councilor Hockwist.
Present.
Councilor Herzog.
Present.
Council President O'Brien.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Late file items, there are a couple.
My apologies, don't kill the messenger. There are 7 of them. Maybe a record. We have 1 transfer. Now, how you want to do these, Mr. President? You want to take them one at a time or all together?
All together.
We have a transfer. You'll see T4, transfer 4 on your desk. There are 4 communications, 4, 5, 6, and 7. First communication is Ladies Night Out Run, Wine, and Chocolate Series.
Sounds like a yes to me.
Next is Newburyport Youth Football and Cheerleading on the Bullnose. Next is an ice sculpture on In Street by Chamber of Commerce.
They won't last too long.
Next Step Living, Invitation Nights, Tree Lighting at Market Square. And we have an order, temporary construction easement and a permanent utility easement. Bay Ring Communications, fiber optic, Cashman Park. And we have a supplemental budget request number 2.
For the purpose of disclosure and discussion, I would move that the rules be suspended, that we may deliberate these important, although tardy, events.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Place in the proper order in the way let's present it. Who wants public comments? Yes, I will, all right. Rob Germanaro, 2 Ashland Street.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Good evening, members of the City Council. Rod Germanaro, 2 Ashland Street. I'm here again tonight to speak about the parking issue that's for resident parking only, 2-hour limit that's up for a second reading tonight in front of the City Council. I'm sure there's going to be some discussion about it, but I just want to reiterate some points here that you know, I've been involved in this neighborhood my entire life, 47 years. My family goes back 70 years in this neighborhood. You know, Manson's Garage was never an issue. Overland Expressions was never a parking issue. Curtis Engine Repair was never a parking issue. Chip's Auto Repair was never a parking issue. It's become a parking issue when Phil and Sons moved there 9 years ago. I moved there 8 years ago, and I didn't move in the neighborhood to become a troublemaker. I moved into the neighborhood because I had an opportunity to move back into the neighborhood that I grew up in as a young man, and it was a great opportunity. I care very much about the neighborhood. You know, I'm a good neighbor. I don't think Phil and Sons are bad people, and I think they run a very good business. I just think we need to get by this public safety issue in regards to the parking. And, you know, the fact remains it's a commercial business in a residential neighborhood, and they need to toe the line there as far as that goes. They have 20 off-street parking lots in a fenced-in yard, and they have 10 facing Merrimack Street. They have 30 feet of frontage on Ashland Street, and at the expense of the neighbors, we're burdened with 8 to 10 cars or more every single day. And the second part of this is, the real irony is that they're asking for 5 more unregistered parking spots. The only person in the city that can allow that is the marshal, who also ironically enforces it. Right now, they have at least 5 unregistered cars, and I would suggest to the city council that if business is so good that they don't have any room for their parking, that maybe it's time to start looking for another place. But I would just say that I'm a good neighbor, and I would remind the city council that we had a 9-0 vote at the first reading, and that I hope that we could get a unanimous vote at the second reading. Thank you for your time.
Hello. So my name is Nick Arokin, and I'm owner of 3 Ashland Street. So the reason that I'm here is, as before, as the last reading, to represent our safety interest. We believe that really this is the only forum that can protect us and protect our safety interest. We've been negotiating for the last 8 years unsuccessfully. There's really no way to make adjustments otherwise. So I think putting in this rule will kind of allow us to function. There's already a precedent set up the street, so there is such an arrangement on top of Ashland Street. So just essentially kind of would like to reiterate all of this, and essentially what Rob has said. And yes, thank you very much.
Good evening, Mr. President, City Council. I also am here to comment about the parking on Ashland Street. I don't live on Ashland Street. I live at 12 Walnut Street for 22 years. And I find what was just said a little different from what I've already researched. There's a curb right on Ashland Street that's been painted yellow. There's no DPW permit that's been issued, because I went down there today to have that curb painted yellow. But one of the gentlemen just spoke, painted the curb on his own. Now that's city property that no regular person's supposed to touch or paint. So you can call it when people tag and spray paint, granted because it's painted yellow, this person took it upon themselves to do it. That's not being a good citizen, and that's not going with the rules of the city or the neighborhood, okay? If the person wants to admit it, that's fine. If they don't, that's up to them. But as far as, you know, these vehicles that park are customers, many of them from Newburyport. They park on a city street. They're not hurting anybody. They're not running anybody down. They're just parking there for a period of time. And from what I understand about what's wanted is it's between 7 and 6, only when they're open. The cars are gone. They're there for the customers to pick up their vehicles, so that they don't have to walk through the parking lot and do things. And there's other things that have gone on that you don't know about, as far as land. Stakes been missing from land that now has to be resurveyed, that people are claiming they're such good neighbors and so wonderful. So there's a lot more to this than what you're being told by some of the 2 people that spoke before me. So before you vote unanimously, find out what's really going on. I don't come here that often to speak. I have done my homework. I have documents here. So just really know what's going on down there before the people come out and say they're all so wonderful. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But there's more going on here that you don't realize. Thank you.
Peter Fitzsimmons, 7 Arlington Street. And the reason I'm here is I just recently heard that the Harbor Commission would be requesting money for a planning or study for a new structure to be built on the waterfront, Harbor Master building. I've heard that it would be, 2 stories, potentially higher if you have to do sea level rise mitigation. It could cost upwards of $1 million. And I guess what I'm concerned about is that I just heard about this recently. I mean, I heard saw nothing in newspapers, heard nothing from government. And I think this is, a significant development on the waterfront, and I think it needs to have more public airing. So I'm not in favor of allocating city money at this time for that, if that's what the request is. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Strauss?
Mike Strauss, 56 Federal Street, Energy Advisory Committee. Mr. President, City Councilors, one of the items in front of you tonight is a request from Next Step Living to set up a table on Market Square to offer our residents no-cost energy audits of their homes. They've done this in the past, not only set up a table there, but offered these no-cost energy audits. They're a good idea. They give the residents a bunch of freebies, information, how they can reduce their energy use, and it's completely consistent with the energy roadmap for the city that's being developed now under state funds. So I encourage you both to permit this and also to get your own energy audits. Thank you.
Bill Harris?
My name is Bill Harris. I live at 56 Lime Street in Newburyport. I'm here for the Newburyport Chapter 91 Citizens Committee. I'm here to ask the council not to just consider as a routine transfer the $134,200 requested by the city for the design of a harbor master and visiting boat center. This is an important facility. The city needs it. If it's done right, way more than the majority of funding can come from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the Department of the Interior. But I'm suggesting that you refer this transfer to the Budget and Finance Committee, but then critically to the Committee on Planning and Development. And the reason is there are at least 3 alternative sites, and what you do will make a difference, whether you'll have a big cost overrun, whether you won't get federal money, whether you'll have another adverse effect on the historic district as we're going through with the 40 Merrimack Ale House. This is expensive. The architect is completely redoing the design. It delays the project. We don't need this for a city project with city monies. So the one alternative that's proposed, to keep it where it is, it's 2.5 feet on NRA property. That maximizes regulatory costs. I don't have to give you the details. It was never surveyed before it was moved upriver around 2005. That's also a site of subsidence. We have a major underground water system. The foundation costs will be way higher there. The alternative of just moving it 2.5 feet downriver will then still block the views of 17,000 visitors to the Custom House. If it takes federal money, that will trigger Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, another adverse effect. The city doesn't need to be doing this when it has this National Register district. The third alternative, you move it 17.5 feet downriver or more, relocate the memorials in granite for the lost seamen upriver, maintain the offshore floats, preserve a view corridor, create the potential for a vehicular access to the city fish pier, which there was when the Graff brothers made it available to the city at very low cost in 1955. That will avoid probably a full scope environmental review because you can mitigate the project. It will preserve view corridors. It will be away from the soil subsidence. So I really urge, you should just not do a project like this so it can be built on the city fish pier. It's a needed resource. But if you do it so you cut off federal money and you have a full scope environmental review, you add a year or 2 to delay, you don't need this, and we as taxpayers don't need it. So I really urge you, have a public hearing before planning and development or some other location. Don't do this in a mindless way. Thank you.
Leslie Eckel, 36 Warren Street. Bill Harris said it much better than I ever will, but I'm concerned about the siting of this building, and particularly if it's going to interfere with the views of the river. And I think we ought to be having a public discussion about this building. It's really going to impact the waterfront, and I ask that you make this an open public discussion. Thank you.
Stephanie Nikitich, 93 High Street. As much as I like this current council, I was concerned to see so many substantive zoning ordinance changes coming up at the end of the year before the change of councils. There are Scrivener's errors, which, you know, of course, that's a normal thing to correct, but there are some of these things, not all of them I understand myself, but they seem to be major changes to zoning in advance of what I understood would be an overall review starting next year of our zoning, all of our zoning ordinances. So it seems to me as though these proposed changes might be premature. I know that for one of them, the chairman of the ZBA has already written a letter to you in opposition, so there's nothing I can add to what he has written. The change which would allow everything citywide to go from variance to a special permit. This seems to me to be fairly drastic and requiring more consideration than a simple vote tonight. It seems to me actually in our denser neighborhoods to be a step backward from where we are in zoning. The third one that seems significant to me is the change for the proposed hotel downtown. And what's proposed doesn't seem unusual, that our downtown is historically a downtown with 0 setbacks. So the dimensional requirements, changing that from a variance to a special permit, don't seem unreasonable. However, my concern is that passing this and perhaps allowing an immediate application by the hotel developer would somehow sidestep some of our other the mechanisms that we have as a city to ensure that the design of the hotel is amenable to the rest of our buildings, and that mechanisms that the city council has at its disposal to get parking funds from a downtown developer you know, are taken advantage of so that taxpayers aren't paying for hotel parking downtown. So I guess my request is that these major things be deferred rather than being voted on now, that they be given more thought into next year. Thank you.
Steve Bond?
Good evening. My name's Steve Bond. I'm here to represent Bayring Communications and to speak and answer questions in support of the easement and mitigation for the use of Cashman Park.
Okay. That's it for public comment. Move on to the consent agenda.
The agenda this evening consists of the approval of the minutes for November 12, 2013. There are 3 transfers. First transfer is Health Recycling Energy, the amount of $20,000 to household hazardous waste, and $10,000 of which goes to chipper service. That's in for approval. Second transfer is DPS Highway Reserve for Appropriation of Cemetery Receipts, $7,250 to grounds maintenance. That's in for approval. The third transfer for $134,200, the Harbor Master transfer, has been removed.
Keep it budget funding.
You want to keep it in budget and finance? Okay. That's to be referred to budget and finance. There are 3 communications. First communication, secondhand motor vehicle license renewal 2014. Newburyport Auto Brokers, that's to be referred to license and permits. Second communication, Parks Commission request to close Greenleaf Street for a winter carnival on January 11, 2014 for public safety. Third communication, Jimmy Fund Benefit Bike-a-thon, spring and summer of 2014, again to public safety. And that's the consent agenda.
I had a request for the number 2 communication to go from public safety to approved.
Okay.
Any other changes or concerns?
Mr. President, I would ask that that transfer number 3, I would like to amend that to include planning and development as well, please.
Budget and Finance, and Planning and Development.
Councilor Jones.
Mr. President, perhaps with due respect to the maker of that motion, that it may be best to make this a committee of the whole meeting so that all of us may have the opportunity to discuss the harbor master's proposal, as opposed to sending it to two committees, just make it a committee of the whole.
I'll second that.
Okay. We did the whole.
The reason I hesitate is that it's usually with a committee and committee of the whole, only because where is it if it's committee of the whole? It's got to come
But
out of
Budget,
something.
Finance, and Committee of the Whole.
I think it's come out. Just my opinion. So it's in Budget, Finance, and Committee of the Whole.
Any other concerns? What is the wish of the council?
Motion approved as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Move on to transfer number 3.
Transfer number 3. How about number 4? That's the Harbor Master one, that's the one that was just. Transfer number 4, Mayor's Department, free cash, $3,450, to DPS Highway, citywide maintenance, $3,450.
Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Herzog?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no objection to this transfer. Traffic Safety Committee has met. They're recommending the study be conducted at this cost. I get it. But I'm afraid, Mr. President, that this might start a trickle down of other recommendations coming from the Traffic Safety Committee, and that the only funding source would be free cash. I don't want to start a precedent tonight, so I will be voting against this because of the funding source.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Any further discussion? Councilor Cronin?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, it seems to me that the best way to handle that situation down on Low Street is to put a curbing up. There was a family that lives right across the street from Bashaw Way that approached the city and had a problem with the fact that people were driving onto their property, trying to get around cars that were trying to take a left to get up Bashaw Way. The city's answer to that was to put in crushed stone, which just made a bigger mess out of the property. I would think that the best way to approach that, I don't think that Low Street is wide enough, that area of Low Street is wide enough for a turning lane. So I think the best approach there would be to put a granite curbing in and let the traffic slow down as it may. But I just want to touch on something else. This amount of money, the DPW was looking for a transfer of $3,000 somewhere along the line to take care of a public safety issue on Columbus Ave with trees that the neighbors up there have been trying to get taken down for the last 2 years. And I won't approve this transfer, I won't vote to approve this transfer until I know that those trees are taken care of on Columbus Avenue. Thank you.
Okay, at the risk of slings and arrows, the Traffic Safety Committee looked at this portion of Low Street holistically with the rest of it, and one of the issues that came up was turning radiuses into Bashaw Way, and not necessarily a high crash location, but a real confusing location. So one of the members of our committee is the Merrimack Valley, member of the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, and they have volunteered to go up there at minimal cost to take a look at this. This is going to be one of many to address Councilor Herzog's concern. This Public Safety Committee, Traffic Safety Committee, didn't exist during the budget time. This was a reactive / proactive response to some of the real serious traffic concerns we have in the city. We don't have a budget item for it. we have to address it somehow. You know, we talk about free cash. Well, it's not free cash, but it's unencumbered, unassigned cash. And it's supposed to be used for good purposes. To me, a public safety issue is a good purpose. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this, though I do need trees taken down in Ward 3 as well.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
It's roll call for $3,450 free cash transfer to DPS Highway. Councilor Jones has recused himself. Councilor Sullivan.
No.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darragh.
Yes.
Councilor Earls is still absent. Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
No.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Communication.
I'm not gonna build any more streets.
Communication 4, which is on your desk, is one of the late files. This is the, would you like me to read it,
This
Mr.
year.
President? Dear Newburyport City Council, we are writing to request permission to utilize the streets of Newburyport for our second annual Ladies Night Out Run, Wine, and Chocolate 5K on December 14th from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. The event will be the same exact route and routine as last year, starting and finishing at the Orthodox Church on Harris Street. We were thrilled at the response from businesses and involvement from Newburyport locals last year and are seeing more and more representation from the town this year. We've met with Lieutenant Samasco and have been given his reapproval on the course, seeing no issues last year. We look forward to bringing this unique event to Newburyport in December. Look forward to hearing from you. Best, Ashley and Brandy.
I move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Communication 5.
Dear Sir or Madam, the Newburyport Youth Cheerleading Organization would like to solicit donations in town on December 6th and 13th from 6 to 8 p.m., I presume. After placing second in a regional competition last week, we've been offered a bid to compete at the Nationals in Disney. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the girls involved. However, it comes with a hefty price. In addition to the massive funds we need to raise to send each girl, the coaches, and one parent per child, we are also facing a major time constraint. We must have our goal raised by the beginning of January to secure our spot in the competition, hence the last-minute request and immediate need for approval. Girls would be set up on the bullnose and/or the top of N Street so as not to block traffic in and out of storefronts. Thank you for your consideration. We hope to make our city proud. Go Newburyport Clippers.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Communication 6.
Dear Clerk Jones, Greater Newburyport Chamber of Commerce, on behalf of its retail community, would like to respectfully request the use of N Street for an ice sculpture event to be held on Saturday, January 18th from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. We are hoping for an excellent shopping and dining season as we close out 2013, but are also looking at creating some more activity downtown in the quiet month of January. This event will help attract residents and visitors alike to come and view an ice sculpture demonstration, listen to music, and enjoy some light refreshments. This event will be open to the public at no charge. We expect that the ice sculptures will remain on N Street as long as Mother Nature allows. As always, we are most grateful to the council's support of the chamber and our retail and restaurant members. Thank you, Ann Oman, President.
Motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Communication 7.
Communication 7 is regarding Next Step Living, same as last year. The nights they're talking about are invitation nights, first 2 Fridays in December, and the Newburyport Tree Lighting Night on December 1st. The opportunities they would like, they want to place an educational table in Market Square at invitation night, as I said, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., and on tree lighting on December 1st from 3:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. I feel that by having a presence again this year, we can drive more interest in the program going into the winter season. Susan Snyder, Regional Project Manager, Next Step Living.
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Second reading, Margot Kopp, 22 Goldsmith Drive, to the Disabilities Commission until October 1st, 2016.
Motion approved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Need a roll call? Not that they're saying for you.
Such a stickler for details.
Aye.
Councilor Jones says aye. Councilor Sullivan?
Aye.
Councilor Cameron?
Aye.
Councilor Connell?
Aye.
Councilor Cronin?
Aye.
Councilor Darabin?
Yes.
Thought so. Councilor Earls is still absent. Councilor Harquist?
Yes.
Councilor Herzog?
Yes.
Councilor Bryan?
Yes.
That would be 8 ayes.
Didn't change it.
No, it did not.
We're going to orders.
We have first order, which reads as follows. The City Council of the City of Newburyport, on behalf of the city, accepts with gratitude the donation of $72,630 from the Mayor Gaydon W. Morrow Charitable Foundation. Funds to be used as indicated in a letter to Mayor Donna D. Holliday from Robert D. Merrill, trustee, dated November 4th, 2013, submitted Councilor Thomas F. O'Brien, and there is a letter attached. Would you like me to read the areas where the money is going? Rediscovering Caleb, as outlined in the 2014 funding recommendations, $550. That's a presentation booklet. Second, YWCA, as outlined, $5,000. 3, Joppa Park Improvement Project, $17,080. Fourth, Belleville Improvement Society. Funds will be utilized for the illumination of tablets, lily pond curbing, and letter tinting, $8,400. Atwood Park Improvement Project for fencing along School Street to enhance the areas functionally and provide safety for the participants, $13,354. 6, Clipper City Rail Trail Phase 2, 2013 meeting notes under current projects outline. They are to be used for the historic interpretive panels and concrete bases outlined in said budget. Money's allocated to be used for swing benches and/or Gretchen benches, as pictured in the Rail Trail Phase 2 project status report summary, $20,000. I know the City Council will have to formally accept these after notification of the acceptance at the turn of the year. Mayor, the foundation will send a check to the city. In the meantime, we hope that all in Newburyport have a wonderful Thanksgiving, a blessed Christmas, and a safe, joyous, and prosperous New Year. Sincerely, Robert D. Morrow.
Motion approved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Order 2, which again is in your late file packet on your desk, reads as follows. The City Council of the City of Newburyport hereby approves as a temporary construction and permanent utility easement agreement with Bayrene Communications dated October 22nd, 2013, for the installation of subsurface fiber optic cable system and a Bayrene compensation and mitigation agreement dated the same, attached herewith Exhibit D, and further, the Mayor of the City of Newburyport is hereby authorized to sign said agreements in substantially the same format on behalf of the city, submitted Councilor Cronin.
Motion approved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor, Josh?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for Mr. Bond, but before we go there, I was wondering if either perhaps someone from the mayor's office could just elaborate for anyone listening what we're actually being asked to approve.
Good evening, councilors. So Steve Bond is here. He's Director of Operations for Bayrene Communications. What's essentially before you is both a temporary construction and a permanent utility easement for a small section of land down at Cashman Park. Bayrene Communications is seeking to run conduit underneath the Merrimack River from Salisbury to Newburyport And essentially, it's one of the last connections in a fiber network that they're building from New Hampshire down to Boston. They approached the city several months ago, perhaps even a year ago. And they've gotten approvals at the state level from DEP, from the Army Corps. They've gotten local okays from Conservation Commission. And essentially, they're looking to start this work as soon as possible, hoping to get the work done before the cold sets in. We've also, the city's secured approval from Department of Fish and Game because we have a land management agreement with them for a catchment ramp and parking lot. They've given approval for this. So there's 4 handholds, I believe, that will be part of the utility easement, the permanent utility easement. And then the fiber network will connect up to Merrimack Street and on up to High. The city negotiated a mitigation agreement with Bayring. Bayring will give a donation to the Parks Department for $3,000, and they will be building a fiber network between the high school and the new Bresnahan School, and providing free service on that fiber network for the next 10 years. I think that's a fair synopsis of what's before.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Mr. Lombardi for sharing that. I think this is great news. It seems to be a win-win-win-win. School, parks, city, Bayring. There's a lot of entities that are all getting something out of this. I think it's great. That said, I do have a quick question for Mr. Bond, if you don't mind, Mr. President. I was looking through this, and I think it's great. Just my question is as you're building, as Peter mentioned, as you're building a network from Boston to the border, many residents have approached me in recent months. I hadn't known about this. Many residents have approached me in recent months whether there's a possibility of some kind of provider to step forward to perhaps be a competitor to Comcast on a residential level, from an internet residential level. And I'm just wondering, I understand that, well, one, I guess a 2-part question if you don't mind. One is, without naming names, do you currently have any customers that you service in Newburyport? And number 2, would you be open to the idea, not tonight, but at some point down the road, to perhaps be that competitor to the monopoly that all the residents currently have?
Yeah. The answer to the first question is we do have a number of customers that are in Newburyport.
Okay.
We're already located in the central office in Newburyport on Green Street. So we already provide services in Newburyport, and that's really the reason we went through Newburyport to go to Boston was because we already had a presence here. One of the other reasons was because Verizon doesn't offer any FiOS along the seacoast down to Boston. But to answer your question about residential service, no, we don't provide residential service. All our customers are commercial customers. The service we provide is fiber-based service to businesses with high-speed internet and phone service tied in, voice over IP phone service. So, and the reason we don't is we don't provide video. And if you don't have a triple play, you don't have a play.
Right.
So.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. This may be for Mr. Bond or maybe for Mr. Lombardi. What exactly is a fiber optic cable between the high school and the Bresnahan going to accomplish that isn't already happening?
I think that I just want to be clear. What we're providing in the mitigation is a dark fiber connection so that the school can use it for whatever means whatever purpose they want. So because it's a new school, I know that the construction is really what we're providing to link the two facilities. So with the new construction, we'll be pulling our fiber through the conduit into the building and running it a mile down the street to the high school.
And just to follow up, all the schools currently, all the facilities are connected with internal fiber network currently, except for the high school and the new Bresnahan School. So this was an opportunity where they were going down High Street anyways to make that final connection on the school side.
Further questions?
Supplemental budget request number 2, based on actual FY14 revenue, including finalized new growth figures and additional state aid for education. I am requesting $161,070 in funding be applied to the school department account 53201 to reduce an anticipated deficit in the FY14 school budget. This amount reflects a difference between what was originally forecast for Chapter 70 funding based on the initial House version of the state budget, and what the city will actually receive now that the state budget has been finalized. That's a memo from Donna D. Holliday, Mayor, to the present members of the City Council, dated November 22nd, 2013, again, entitled Supplemental Budget Request Number 2.
Motion to
Motion
approve.
refer to joint ed.
Is two motions simultaneous? Joint ed and approve.
I will second the motion to refer to joint ed.
Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. President. While I'm excited to see that we're going to try and reduce some of the deficit that we are reading about in the newspaper, which seems to be a moving target these days, I know that there's anticipation on the part of many school committee members to have a discussion about this funding, and certainly they're trying to work their way through a $500,000 shortfall. This will give them ample time, and the joint ed will be able to report back to us. So I think this is commendable, and let's have a full vetting of it.
Any further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I stand to be corrected by Mr. Lombardi. In order to be able to set the tax rate at the next City Council meeting, if we were going to deal with this transfer, is this something that needs to happen on or before the next, does it need to happen before the next City Council meeting, or can it happen at the next City Council meeting?
Yeah, part of the reason it was put in as a late file item was so that if the council did have questions, it could be referred to committee and be vetted in committee and come back for a vote. It would have to be voted on as a supplemental budget request before the tax rate is set. The tax rate is set to be on the agenda for the December 9th council meeting, and that is essentially the very end of when that tax rate could be set, and the city would be able to get the tax bills out in time. So if it would be referred out to committee, it would have to come back for a vote and be voted on one way or another at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is a joint ed meeting this Monday, so we'll have time to vet it if needed.
Any further discussion? Motion, Council Crowe.
Just, Councilor Harquist, maybe, or Chair, maybe we can discuss also just the entire, get an idea of this entire deficit at this time, not just this $161,000 transfer, just to have a better understanding what we're talking about versus what I'm reading in the newspaper. Thank you.
Any further, Council
Just one comment on that, and I want to follow up on what Councilor Cronin suggested, because we are just reading what's in the newspaper. We're not meeting directly with the school committee, but it would seem advisable, I think, for the school committee and the city council to meet together to talk through this issue a little bit, because the numbers are pretty large, and as has been suggested, it seems to be a moving target. We're not sure that we're at the end, the numbers that we're reading in the paper, and perhaps we'd feel more comfortable if we had an opportunity to speak face-to-face with members of the school committee on this matter.
It's 5:30. I was going to say, do you want me to amend it to committee of the whole as well? Is it? Room 118 at the high school. First Monday of every month.
So it's been amended to committee of the whole for a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Committee of the whole.
First ordinance is a tabled ordinance. It is Section 13-180, resident parking.
Sponsors not here.
Reads as
Can't do it on
follows:
the table.
add to G2 the following streets, or portions thereof: State Street, beginning at 184 State Street and proceeding southerly to the end of said State Street on the westerly side.
Motion to table.
We have a letter from the council asking to discuss this. Sent a letter to the council president. We wish to have it here, he's asking, have this discussed tonight.
Okay.
Pass it possible.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a point of order, Mr. President, I don't know what the rules say about this. The sponsor's not here. Does this require a suspension of the rules requiring, before we can act on it, or can we act on it on the basis of the chair's recommendation?
As long as you put a letter into the, just go, not only present with the audience regarding State Street brought out of committee, tonight pursuant to Rule 12 of our rules, I would like to request the council proceed in this matter. Sincerely, Council Brenner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah.
Further discussion?
Just procedure, should we remove, have we removed it from the table? I'm sorry.
Motion removed from the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion approved.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Section 13-180. Motion for approval. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darabin.
Yes.
Councilor Earl. Not present. Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
Yes.
Councilor Bryan.
Yes. Ordinance 2.
Motion removed from the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. President, I'd ask that we retable this motion to give the affected parties another couple of weeks in order to work out some potential compromise before we vote.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Table for the next week. Ordinance 3.
Ordinance number 3 is with respect, it's entitled Boats, Docks, and Waterways, Chapter 4, Section 4.201, Purpose and Authority. It goes on for a number of pages.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Second reading, ordinance number 3. Councilor Jones.
Aye.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darabin.
Yes.
Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
Yes.
Councilor Bryan.
Yes. We're on to ordinance number 4, second reading.
At section 13-136, stop intersections so designated, this street, Buck Street, the intersection northeasterly bound drivers on Buck Street at the intersection of Congress Street.
Motion to approve.
Councilor Robert J. Cronin.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darabin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls. Councilor Harquist. excuse me.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
Yes.
Councilor Bryan.
Yes.
Excuse me, that, who moved on that? Thank you, that's a second.
Committee items. Budget and Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to remove the exemptions from committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go ahead.
Mr. President, motion to approve the exemptions.
Second motion.
Discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, councilors, we've done this, we do this every year. But Budget and Finance Committee did meet earlier this evening with Mr. Squillis and Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Manning. And when this had gone to committee, the idea was to take a look and to see if there was more we could do, either in terms of making those exemptions more widespread or more impactful for the people we're trying to help, and also including more outreach on those. Basically, what we're doing is doubling the amounts of the exemption for each of the categories. And again, it's veterans, and you have this in your packet, veterans in certain categories, and blind people, elders, and surviving spouses of a police or firefighter killed in the line of duty. If we do nothing, then those exemptions stay at the state levels. When we increase them by 100%, we're doubling them. And as you can see, they are particularly used by elders and veterans. And that's as high as we can go. We do get a state reimbursement for each of these of different amounts. And one of my takeaways, I think, every year is I think there might be some advocacy that we would want to do with other municipalities, with the state, to try to, one, be able to do bigger exemptions and also get a state reimbursement. I know many of us talk about elders living on fixed incomes in houses that they've owned for a long time, and that's certainly something I think we as a council have talked a lot about, and maybe there's something we can do at the state level to try to provide more property tax relief for those people that are on fixed incomes. But for the proximate issue, we did vote 3-0 in favor of it, and we hope that you will support it as well. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else?
No.
Joanne,
Nothing to report.
our report, meeting on the next. License and permits. Maplewood City Services,
Nothing to report.
planning and development.
Yes, Mr. President. I move that we remove, and you have 10 items in committee, a number of which we're going to report out tonight. I'd like to take the easy ones first, those are the Scribner's errors. So I move that we remove number 8 from committee at this time.
Second.
This number 8,
Yeah, to be, well, 8, 9, 10. Let's do all the Scribner's errors at once, if we may.
8, 9, and 10. Discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve. I think we have to do these independently, right? Yeah. Motion to approve number 8, and I'm going to have the planning director speak on this if we can get a motion on that on the floor.
If we read what that is first, so we know what
Let me find it first, Mr. President. This is number 20, Scribner's error correction. It should be in the packet in front of you.
It's the one that references personal wireless communication services.
What's that?
It's the one that references personal wireless communications.
Page 3.
Anybody see it?
You want to use my copy?
I don't see it.
It's on page 3 of 4.
Oh, thank you. President rescued me again, thank you. Section 20, personal wireless communication services under subsection 20G, types prohibited location. Delete the words districts 11 and 12 from the last sentence and replace said words with the words I1 and I2, right?
Correct. Correct.
Jointly submitted, Councilors Connell and Darvin.
Okay.
There has been a motion.
This is a very minor housekeeping change that we noticed in looking through the ordinance, and we are in fact prepping for a comprehensive zoning review, but there are some things that I think should be cleaned up before then. One of which is references to zoning districts that don't actually exist, numbered districts, and so we just wanted to properly reference them as the I1 and I2, and this change would correct that in the ordinance.
Any questions?
Just a comment, Mr. President, and that is that all of these items were heard in a joint public hearing on November 13th with the planning board, exhaustively discussed at that time. This not so exhaustively because it was so straightforward, but others were. And the committee voted 2-0. There were 2 members present in favor of recommending this, making a favorable recommendation, and the planning board voted unanimously in favor of this change.
Counselor Jones.
Yes.
Counselor Sullivan.
Yes.
Counselor Cameron.
Aye.
Counselor Connell.
Yes.
Counselor Cronin.
Yes.
I'm going to buy you an eye patch.
Yes.
Counselor Harquist.
Yes.
Counselor Herzog.
Yes.
Counselor Bryan.
Number 8 in your packet, motion to approve.
Number 9 in your packet.
To say 8, I apologize, number 9, my error.
Zoning section 3.
Yes, it is.
I do.
Second.
Second.
Section 3, establishment of districts. Under section 3A, establishment, change the word districts to districts and overlay districts. Change M1 to M, GACM, and add the following listed zoning districts and zoning overlay districts along with the accompanying footnotes. Federal Street Overlay District, IB Residential Overlay District, Plum Island Overlay District, Toll Complex Redevelopment Overlay District, Waterfront West Overlay District, Water Resource Protection District. Jointly submitted, Councilors Connell and Darabin.
These listed districts right now that you see before you are districts that should have been listed in this section of the ordinance previously, but as you know, our ordinance has been added to piecemeal over the years, and for whatever reason at times, those districts were not listed properly in this core section, Section 3, Establishment of Districts. So this amendment would actually place them there for the convenience of any reader. Engineers, architects, attorneys using the ordinance will be very easily able to find all the zoning districts that we have in the city in this one section now.
Again, this item was voted unanimously out of the Planning Development Committee 2-0 and received unanimous recommendation of the Planning Board.
Are the districts defined anywhere else in the ordinance?
Yes, they are. There are applicable sections for those districts and defined in greater detail.
There a motion on the floor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Historic districts, such as the Fruit Street District, that's not defined here. That's in a different ordinance?
Correct. Another citywide ordinance, yes.
Thank you.
And therein lies the rub that perhaps in the original drafting of the zoning code, the ambiguity of it would be covered by the citations in other sections. And I wonder whether or not that was the original intent of the framers, and whether or not that's something to be debated under the wider scope of finding out how we're going to redefine our zoning code.
Agreed. Yes, we anticipate that it's a much broader discussion for the comprehensive rewrite, which we expect will take at least a year. So.
Any further discussion?
Councilor Jones.
I'm going to vote yes on this.
Councilor Sullivan.
I'm going to vote no on this.
Councilor Cameron.
I'm going to vote yes on this.
Councilor Connell.
I'm going to vote yes on this.
Councilor Cronin.
I'm going to vote no on this.
Councilor Darabin.
Just a yes.
Thank you. Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
I'll vote yes.
Council President O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Yes.
7. Zoning, if I remember correctly,
Verse 8.
Supermajority.
supermajority.
Ooh.
I'll pick it up next year.
Motion fails.
Uh-oh.
Mr. President? Yes. Item number 10 in your packet regarding the Section 21, the Plum Island Overlay District, Scrivener's error correction. Motion to approve.
Second.
Guam, I think, Mr. President. Okay.
It's at the end.
Is it at the end? No, I've got it right here. Thank you.
Oh, at the beginning, sorry.
Oh, at the beginning. Section 21, Plum Island Overlay District, under subsection 21-I, unconstructed ways, delete the words, "No building permit shall be issued for a lot with frontage on an unconstructed way," and and replace said words with "no building permit shall be issued for a lot with frontage on an unconstructed way," jointly submitted, Councilors Connell and Deravin.
Mr. President, again, this was voted favorably 2-0 in committee, received a unanimous recommendation by the Planning Board. I might further add that this is consistent with the understanding of the state in terms of enforcing our existing Plum Island overlay. You may recall that there is a consent decree enforced out there with regards to construction and zoning issues, and this has met with their approval as well.
That's it.
Any further discussion?
Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Deravin.
Yes.
Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
Yes.
Councilor Bryan. Motion passes.
Mr. President, I move that we remove number 4 from committee.
Second. Aye.
And I defer to the planning director for an explanation on this one as well.
You need to make a motion.
I apologize. Motion to approve. I apologize.
This proposed amendment is to change the zoning designation of, originally it was proposed as 4 lots, now it's 2 lots only on Story Avenue. These lots were previously considered by the council some time ago. Again, the main point here is that we have a largely commercial district, a business and commercial zone district on Story Avenue, all the way up to the highway interchange. And we have a couple of homes on that street. Their zoning designation is not the most desirable one from a land use and planning point of view. It's inconsistent with their surrounding uses. You tend to see those property values reduced over time, the interest in folks living in the homes, selling the homes, buying the homes, and active uses there being appropriate for the character of the surrounding properties. So we are encouraging those properties to be rezoned to the abutting district, the business district, that it surrounds the entire Story Avenue area at that intersection. And that would allow more appropriate uses to fit in there than the single 2-family homes that are on those 2 properties right now.
Let's go.
Yeah, again, a 2-0 favorable recommendation from the committee and a unanimous recommendation of the planning board. I might ask the planning director to speak to the issue of the current property owners and their views towards these changes in the properties that they own.
The property owners are in favor of the zoning change, the council may recall one of the issues previously that was discussed was low street access. The ability to create low street access for any redevelopment of that area is now able to be done, and that was the concern that was raised last time, that there was not enough ability to divert traffic from having a greater traffic impact at the intersection. So now that that has been solved, I think it's another benefit for doing this zoning change.
Thank you, Mr. President. Do you mean to tell me that any construction that takes place on those rezoned lots will have to be accessed through Low Street?
No, the proposals that we've been looking at from industry developers right now includes a Low Street access. The current, what this proposal would do would allow the same business type of uses on these 2 lots as is allowed on the adjacent lot, both the gas station lot and the one right adjacent to it, which is the home that's right next to the gas station.
So they'll be able to access it through Story Ave if they want to?
That's correct.
All right. My concern there is that since the completion of the roundabout, I live up in the west end of the city, and I have noticed since the opening of that roundabout a significant increase in traffic on Story Avenue. I don't know if you plan on any traffic study up there or, you know, to update it. But that is a huge concern of mine, and it was almost 2 years ago when I first got on the council. I would like to see that resolved before I would vote to go along with this one.
We typically, as doing traffic studies for uses like this or properties like this, any proposed use for this property would result in a traffic study. And that would ultimately recommend, at the end of that, presumably improvements to Story Avenue, whether it be vehicular turning lanes, any signalization changes, bike lanes, things like that. All that would be taken into account as a result of that permitting process. Both site plan approval and special permit approvals would be required. And if the traffic situation was not satisfactorily addressed, it would be denied by the boards. So.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was before us last year, and let me let you all focus on exactly what the council's purview is here. We are rezoning 2 parcels from R1 to commercial. We are not approving any development. We are not approving any access. That is the job of the planning board. That is the plan from the ZBA, from any other board that is going to do construction on those sites is not in the purview of the city council. We are here to approve whether or not these lots get changed from residential R1 to commercial on the condition that we've created over the last 50 years in this city. It is nothing about access. It is nothing about that. It is solely the properties. I think the last time we looked at this, there was some heated discussion about what was going in there, proposed, and I think everything got lost into what the council is actually supposed to do here. Or ask these homeowners that own this property here of the condition that we've created are asking for relief. They're 2 distressed properties at this point. And by us converting those, and the council putting those back to commercial use, will actually bring those back, in a higher total of revenue coming back in property taxes. So I urge you to not look at any development. That is not what we're here for. We are just here to rezone, and that will be everything done through the planning, and again, through any other boards that need to be brought into any other development that's done on these properties, just like any other commercial development, that there would be all that site review within the planning department. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could direct a question back to Councilor Darvin, I'm suddenly confused. I remember those debates and discussions. As you recall, I even filed a motion to reconsider it after it had failed. So I guess my question is this, and I'll be to the point. If the council is not being asked to approve any development tonight, then why is there a zoning change in the first place? If the council is not being asked to approve any development, that will be the purview of the planning board, the zoning board, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, if the status quo is fine, then why is there a zoning change?
If I may help to clarify.
I'll answer that question, and then I'll let
Okay.
Mr. Port. It is not status quo. We are nothing but closer to the status quo in here. We are talking about 2 distressed properties here that are losing its value as R1, that, I don't know if you'd want to live out there or not, but, it's surrounded by commercial. It's surrounded by 24-hour facilities that are there. The car wash, the mobile station, the Shell station, all those things, the convenience store, all those 24-hour-a-day things that are there, businesses that are there, that are surround these 2 lots. That's not status quo. That is not status quo.
With all due respect to the council, typically the council is not a permitting board of the city. The planning board, ZBA, Conservation Commission, et cetera. Those are the boards that look at the great detail of site alignment, building design, traffic, improvements and circulation, things like that. All that gets dealt with at a finer grain when it goes before the board, any development that's proposed. And I agree with Councilor Darvin here. This is really about what the broad definition of what does the city council do when it looks at a zoning map for the city. You're essentially, and you have historically, identified where in the city you think certain uses are appropriate. Story Avenue in that area has long been designated a business zone. There's a bunch of commercial uses there. Port Plaza is part of that. Even the Woodman Way area and the Clipper Way area is part of that business district. It's a little bit unusual for us and counterproductive for us to have 2 single-family homes right along Story Avenue in that area. It doesn't take advantage of the interchange at that area. It doesn't take advantage of the commercial uses in the surrounding area. And in those homes, they don't have the significant value that will continue to lose the interest from people wanting to move in there, because why would you buy a home in the middle of a commercial corridor? So there are much better benefits to be gained by changing this to a business zone that is consistent with the abutting properties. We don't like to have little slivers that are off by their own. This one happens to be an awkward sliver where we have residential single homes in the middle of a surrounded commercial area. We really should be zoning it consistent with what's off of an interchange of a highway, which is what we have in the rest of the area, business district. All those other details and all those concerns that were raised would be dealt with, but through the proper channel of permitting before the local boards. At that point, the board would look at things like the traffic circulation. If they didn't feel like the access was sufficient, either on Story Avenue, Low Street, or any other location, they would deny the project. They tell the applicant, come back with a revised plan, address these issues, or we won't approve the project. So there is plenty of latitude left to control all those little details, but the appropriate forum for map changes is here with the council determining what uses make sense on Story Avenue. And I would argue that single-family homes is not the appropriate use at that location.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. If Mr. Port, if you could just refresh my chronology here. So what we have before us is just, it's for two parcels?
That's correct.
81 and 83.
That's correct.
When this was proposed in place before the council a couple of months ago, it was for 4 parcels?
That's correct. At that time, there were 2 parcels closer to Russell Terrace, Russell Terrace and the extension there that were being proposed. We were considering at that time, and we wanted to have that discussion through the Planning and Development Subcommittee with the Planning Board, whether or not it would make sense to carry the same logic down that stretch of Story Avenue. We decided, and we collectively, I think, agreed at the hearing that was held jointly between the Planning Board and the Planning and Development Subcommittee and the Office of Planning and Development, which I was representing there, to bring it only to the lots that are adjacent to the gas station, essentially, on that side, not...
So it's, what we're proposing here is between the gas station and the entrance to the atria?
That's correct. That's correct. Yep.
Yes. Okay.
And not to go any further beyond that, because at that point, we were really treading a little further, although it is very close to the interchange there, the highway interchange, it is also treading a little too close to what we see as a residential neighborhood. So we decided not to include those in the recommended zoning change.
And what was before the council last year or the year before? Was it just these 2
Last
parcels?
year it was only these 2 here.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Sorry, I thought Councilor Jones was going to say. If this was approved and a developer proposed something in there, what latitude does the planning board, I presume that would be dealing with that, or ZBA? I'm not quite sure.
The first baseline standard is site plan approval. The planning board has criteria in there for traffic improvements, and if they're not satisfied that the vehicular safety, both on the site and going to and from the site, is adequate, they can deny the permit for the project. There may also be special permits involved with the project, and that would also trigger another level of review by the Zoning Board of Appeals in this case. 2 different boards would then be reviewed.
Could the planning board mandate that the developer install some sort of a traffic scheme that had a divided highway there?
Yes, or any other, there's a number of other variations that could happen, but that is definitely one of them.
Yeah. I'll decide in the next 30 seconds whether I'm voting for this or not, but my concern is much like Councilor Sullivan's and pretty much the same as a few of us had a couple of years ago. I think it's a very dangerous intersection, whatever you put in there. If it's an intense use, which I presume it would be if it's zoned commercial as opposed to residential, people are going to want to pull out of there, whether it's a CVS, a whatever, you name whatever is going to go in there, a bank. People are going to come out, and in some cases they're going to want to take a left, and that's just really dangerous, I think, there. And you know, I'm encouraged to hear more about Low Street. You know, I don't want to be kicking myself in 2 years when something goes in there that is creating that kind of danger. And not to compare ourselves to Amesbury, but I drive every day on Route 110 where that Stop and Shop Plaza is. When you're heading to get on 495, there's a McDonald's, a Dunkin' Donuts, and people come out of there, and there's probably more traffic there than there is in Newburyport on Story Ave. And you know, I know people want their coffee and they want their McDonald's, but then they want to go the way they were originally going, and people just do the craziest stuff. And I've seen multiple accidents almost occur, and I've seen the aftermath of several people pulling out of a Dunkin' Donuts and just wanting to cut across everything and taking a left. And that whole thing needs to be divided further, if you ask me. But it's a really tough intersection there at Stories. So
I can safely tell you that the planning office and the planning board, and I can't speak directly for the planning board, but I certainly have discussed this type of issue with them enough. that we would not be satisfied, we would not be approving a site plan for that area that did not include a low street access, and that did not reduce the length and the number of curb cuts in that section that would thereby improve the traffic situation from where it is today as opposed to exacerbate it.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to note that I tried not to speak on this issue, but
Opportunity.
We're proud of you.
after hearing the compelling arguments of my friends, I would suggest to you to think just a moment about your argument. And your argument is that the State Highway Route 113, which is what Story Avenue is, a state highway, divided highway, and the largest trafficked street in the city of Newburyport, is an inappropriate use for a residence. So the argument that you make that, that this commercial district creates a hazard for people driving in and out, creates a hazard for the people, the victims of our growth, who have been taxpayers of those 4 homes, that 2 of which are already in the commercial zone, and 2 of which have been asking to be changed to commercial zone, that are such a burden trying to get in and out of their personal homes onto a public highway, the most traveled street in the city of Newburyport, taking their lives and the lives of their children at great jeopardy every time they want to leave their front door, and telling them that we as a city are making a decision that we would rather leave the status quo, which is to submit them to the rigors of trying to drive through a commercial district to get to their home, and say that we're not going to give them the relief to move, to sell their home for a higher use for its best value, because we are making a political statement that we don't like a particular use, instead of letting the planning board do its job, which is to redesign the new section of Story Ave. Those 4 houses are an inappropriate use in that district, and the condition we create for the owners of those 4 houses by refusing to grant them this relief, if I were the owner of those 4 houses, I would say, if you don't want to do what's morally your obligation as the city council, which is to change this map and to allow us the best and highest use of our property, then I would simply, instead of waiting on the logical assumptions and votes of this council, I would choose to see you in court. And I think that they'd have a very good position to state that they are surrounded. These 2 houses are surrounded by non-residential facilities. And for us to suggest to them that they're not allowed relief by this change, which is logical and which has been voted unanimously by the planning board and endorsed by the planning director, would set for them a very interesting condition in litigation. And I will be voting in favor.
I most likely know the answer to this, but is there any way we can push the question in a way that the only egress is on Low Street?
Not to say that the only, it's really difficult to tie those things together, because effectively under zoning, you're really just changing the map boundaries in this amendment. Yeah. That would really go beyond this into another type of zoning / developers agreement status. We have actually already worked out those details regarding the Low Street access and the conceptuals, which would ultimately have to be approved by the local boards. And like I said, I know the council wants that reassurance tonight before some sort of vote, but I can fairly tell you that the planning board would not approve a site plan that did not have that Low Street access. The ZBA would not approve it for the same reasons you're concerned about, limiting the length of curb cuts. We have that very long length of curb cuts near the gas station. That's not a desirable situation, and pulling those entrances away from the intersection will much improve the situation we have there today.
Just a response to that, I'm not asking about the Low Street entrance or egress. I'm more concerned about eliminating the State Street one. And that's I think where everybody in this room is coming from.
Okay.
I mean Story Ave, excuse me.
I think it would be hard pressed under the zoning change to remove or eliminate or make impossible a Story Ave driveway connection. Typically what happens is, if a map change is done like this, is the board would then force through their permitting process the elimination, if there is an access somewhere else, or the removal of a portion of the access off of Story Ave, or in some cases, a lane that turns only in, for instance, or turns only out in a certain direction. But I have to say, I've not seen any amendments done to zoning maps and their boundaries for districts that requires a curb cut to be added or deleted from a certain section of roadway. Right now, those parcels get their frontage from Story Avenue. So, you know, generally speaking, there would be some sort of access from Story Avenue, however limited it might be in the end. But like I said, Low Street is an essential access point certainly for my office in whatever happens with that land.
Yeah. I think the councilors, Councilor Sullivan, Councilor Cameron, Councilor Cronin, have all asked very sensible questions that any ordinary citizen who travels up and down Story Avenue would ask, and what might happen at some future date. But we don't know what kind of proposal might be put forth. But it is the purview of the planning board, at the expense of a proponent, to analyze the traffic impacts and to mitigate traffic impacts as we would hope they would. And having looked rather exhaustively at this 2 years ago, I think that the planning board has a very clear direction in terms of where they would like to go here, and that is to relieve the traffic congestion, and if there is a development in this region, that has to be paramount in people's minds. So you're asking the correct questions. It's just that this issue deals with the relief that individuals, we believe, deserve, and it is more broadly the responsibility of the City Council to draw boundaries within which certain activities take place. It is not within our purview to specify where curb cuts are, where sidewalks might be, where you plant a tree, how you erect a sign. It is merely to say, this is a kind of activity that is appropriate to this portion of the city. It's consistent with what other things happen in that portion of the city, and therefore we're proposing to make this change tonight.
I think that what we're trying to do is unenforceable. If we're trying to restrict as a caveat of the change, then we're creating a spot zoning condition, and that's unenforceable and would effectively, on appeal, undo all good we're trying to do here. So while I understand, and I think everybody hears loudly and clearly the end goal here, I think that because of our purview, the less we do beyond the actual changing of the map, the less harm we do, because any caveats create conditions for litigation.
I'm just going to add this one thing, and then we can move on. As a real estate broker, I understand the need to relieve those people of the situation that they are in. As a retired firefighter, I can tell you that I responded to a great many accidents up there, and as Councilor Cameron said, it's that left-hand turn issue. And I know I'm a short timer on this council, but I would like you as the planning director to consider over the course of the next few years to possibly work toward eliminating the left-hand turn and enforcing it. I know they did it with Panera Bread, but people still come out of there and take that left-hand turn. And that's what's causing most of those accidents up there. So I would just ask you to consider that over the years.
I agree with you. That particular curve could have been pulled a little tighter in front of Panera, which is what I would envision happening on this site we're talking about right now, to make it physically impossible for someone to do that unsafe turn.
Yeah.
Roll call.
So motion to approve zoning map 3C. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darby.
Yes.
Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
Yes.
Councilor Bryant.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'd just like to note that the chairman pro tem has taken all the easy ones. Now we'll move into the...
Would the chairman prefer to bring this up?
Oh, no, you're doing a great job.
Yeah, I'll bet. Yes, I would like to remove item number 5, non-conforming use of structures and lots from committee.
Second.
Aye. Mr. President? Move to approve number 5.
Second.
I refer to the planning director to make the presentation again.
Thank you. This change right here is relatively straightforward. We had, you may recall, some discussion about this previously, actually, this particular matter, but due to some recent court findings on cases elsewhere, and we do always try to keep our zoning ordinance up to date, not just in terms of the interpretation of state law, but also recent court findings. Some recent court findings have concluded that there is not a need to have a variance for alterations, extensions of single and two-family homes, that permanent process can be by special permit only. So this change here is meant to modify the Newburyport zoning ordinance to be consistent with that recent case law and require, rather than a variance for those changes, a special permit. For anybody who is concerned and wonders, are there any protections taken away from the city for this? The only thing we're eliminating here is the applicants need to demonstrate a, quote, hardship, which is actually a very high level, a high bar to raise. There's a lot of people in Newburyport, homeowners, who I'm sure would like to do some small extension or addition or modification to their homes. And the state legislature, when they adopted 40A, the Zoning Act, intentionally put this section in there to allow greater latitude for single and two-family homeowners. So the amendment that we have here today is just to be consistent with the most recent case law on that point and remove the undue burden on those homeowners to do modifications to their homes. In this case, there's still the ability of the local board, the zoning board of appeals here in Newburyport, to approve or deny by special permit those extensions, those alterations. But I see no need for a variance for those procedures, and neither does the planning board or the ZBA.
Mr. President, just a comment again. The committee voted 2-0 to make a favorable recommendation on this, and the planning board was particularly emphatic in their support of this from a particular point of view, and that was that the bar before going before a zoning board and reaching the bar of a hardship under an ordinance as opposed to a special permit was one that they felt was particularly onerous, particularly to individuals doing minor things, relatively minor things, to their homes. It added expense in terms of legal costs, permitting delays, which could lead to construction delays. And again, in the homeowner's wallet is where they were really focusing their attention. In addition to that, the chairman, who is an attorney who's obviously quite experienced in this area, expressed concern that we should be, wherever possible, consistent with current case law. It's hard to keep up with it. It's always changing. But to the extent that we can, stay current with case law as well as with existing state law. So this one seemed to the committee to be a fairly straightforward and reasonable effort to assist people doing things that add to their property value and add to the enjoyment of their homes.
Thank you, and again, I'm blessed that I failed to make the committee meeting.
You sure are.
The 3 hours of my life that, all right. However, as the short-time devil's advocate on this council, and with due respect to the professionals in the land use business, I would suggest that this, while coming current with case law sounds like a laudable goal, I would suggest that case law is made based on instant issues and quite often changes. I'm no fan of variances by any stretch, having sat on the ZBA and having actually endured the suffering of being held hostage on variance appeals. What I would suggest is that this is clearly something that our comprehensive zoning review may benefit us in In essence, what I'm saying is that acting in haste on this issue may cause us to regret at leisure, and that perhaps this should be best held in abeyance until we have the comprehensive zoning review. My thoughts on it.
If I may, like I said a second ago, it is recent case law, and it is possible that new interpretations will come out. I doubt on this particular matter that there'll be anything earth-shattering that comes out of the courts. I think they've refined this particular matter pretty well. And it is possible for us to take into account many issues that are of concern to the council, the courts, and so forth in our zoning rewrite, but that will be a lengthy process. I know in talking to Gary Calderwood, the building commissioner, we do have applicants that come in regularly, and this is a point of debate. It has been a point of debate on numerous applications where, unfortunately, the applicants who are doing something very minor, as Councilor Connell had pointed out, something very minor, are forced to come in for a variance. And we actually did an amendment about 2 years ago on Plum Island addressing a similar situation where there was a need for a trigger there, unfortunately, for a variance to do some relatively minor things. And while we don't want to be encouraging huge growth on the island, it didn't make any sense to send people through the variance procedure for that when a special permit would do just fine and still provide the protective measure for the city. So I would argue that while we could wait and postpone things like this, I don't know that there's much of a benefit, given that in the end we're likely to come out to the exact same point we are now, and wanting to use a special permit procedure that gives us the protection as a city entities through our boards, looking at the permits, seeing if the applicants are being in character with their neighborhood, with their proposals, but takes away the unnecessary need of a high burden threshold, frivolous appeals, and things like that. So.
Section 9, non-conforming uses, structures and lots. Councilor Jones.
Yes.
Councilor Sullivan.
Yes.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darvin.
Yes.
Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
Aye.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to remove item number 6. We're getting down to the thin end of it.
Aye.
Mr. President, I move to move in favor of passing item number 6, which received a favorable recommendation by committee.
Second.
Again, received a favorable recommendation by committee, received a unanimous recommendation by the planning board, and I'll leave it to the planning director to flap his lips for a change.
Sure. I'll try to be brief.
Yeah, you've promised that before, too.
Why start now?
Only Councilor Cameron can lie that openly.
I think I've already used my time now. In the downtown, in our central business district, right in the downtown here, we have noticed in looking at 2 key projects the city is interested in having happen, and I'm sure you all have had your involvement in prior discussions over these things, but the intermodal parking facility, which is our garage as we know it, to take some parking off the central waterfront, which I think is a laudable goal. That and a hotel, both of which we've been discussing, the Titcomb Street site for these elements. It came to my attention in looking at our zoning ordinance that we have some setbacks that aren't necessarily the best thing for our urban streetscape, whereby the parking garage, even with active first floor uses, which is how we've planned it, and a hotel, which would have, again, active front floor activities there. Both of those buildings, if they were to happen, would be required to be 20-foot setback from the street line, which is inconsistent with our historic character and our streetscapes in the downtown. If you look at Market Square and State Street, you'll see those buildings are brought right up to the sidewalk there. And while they don't need to be exactly up against the sidewalk, I would argue that it's not in our best interest to impose a zoning setback that's more appropriate for a place like in suburban sprawl. Newburyport has a lot of character, and part of that is the walkability, the relationship of the buildings to the streetscape, and I think we should encourage the same sort of connection with new buildings that maybe infill, the parking garage being one of those, and the hotel potentially being one of those. So the change here that is recommended is that within that business district, which is narrowly defined within this core downtown here, it does not include the central waterfront, that within this district, if a developer or the city, if it's involved, for instance, with a garage, wants to have a setback that's less than 20 feet, for instance, it can apply for that change through the Zoning Board of Appeals by a special permit and does not need to use the variance procedure. Again, we're back to that argument of what's the benefit of having a variance when a special permit will do. If the special permit gives the board the discretionary authority to say yes if it's in character and fits appropriately, and to say no if it does not, I would argue that the city has the protection it needs. And the only benefit, really, of having a variance in there is that burden, that additional burden on the applicants for demonstrating hardship, which is a very high level bar to reach. And you ultimately, the only thing I think the city would see out of that is the potential for some frivolous appeal. The city may be fully backing a project, think it's great, like the garage that we've talked about. The city council designated a site for it, and yet you could have somebody who doesn't like the fact that it moves 1 foot closer to the sidewalk. And you could have a project that we've all wanted, the garage, for instance, held up for years in litigation or debate over that. And I just see no benefit in that. To me, if the city boards have done a thorough review through site plan approval, special permits, et cetera, I would argue the special permit procedure is sufficient, and that's what this change accomplishes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess it's clearly an example of youth and enthusiasm versus old age and treachery. And I appreciate that you want to expeditiously assist in these two upcoming projects, and that the answer you see is in change of zoning. I've lived here a long time, and there are very few constants that we can count on, but after 55 years, I think I can safely say that downtown hotels and parking garages are a fairly constant, long-term plan that will probably, in the few years I have in this mortal coil, I don't hold a lot of hope that they're going to be built soon. So I'm going to suggest once again that this is something that we can clearly deal with under comprehensive zoning review. And I'm very uncomfortable in making conditional changes on the promise of a forthcoming garage or hotel.
Yeah, I appreciate much of what the councilor said. I'll probably be in the grave before he will, so he has a higher likelihood of seeing these things take place before he passes through those gates. I just want to say something about these two items, and I originally asked rather pointedly whether or not this constituted spot zoning for the purposes of accomplishing a public purpose, and I was persuaded that no, it does not. And I'm not going to go through all the arguments, but the planning board was more articulate in that regard than me. The other thing that I had to I want to relay to you is the extensive discussion we had, and Councilor Derivin will certainly confirm this, it was an extensive discussion on the 13th of the month, about the possible creation of a kind of a gap-toothed streetscape if the setback requirements for these structures are enforced. And the public purpose of this setback requirement is to maintain streetscapes in part, also maintain public access and emergency access and things of that as well. But primarily it's aesthetic, and this is one opportunity we have to preserve some of the character that is consistent with the rest of the downtown. Now, I have to admit that I was somewhat torn on this. The imp of the perverse whispered in my ear, because I was originally opposed to the Titcomb Street lot as a location. I thought, well, here's an opportunity to make mischief, in reference to Councilor Jones's previous statement. But I lost that vote a long time ago. And in fact, if it is the will of the council and the city to move forward on a parking garage at that site, it makes much more sense to do it in a way that is aesthetically and historically consistent with what else we have in the downtown district. And for that reason, I argue in favor of passing this change tonight, allowing, without unnecessarily delay, these projects, which, at least one of which is imminent, to start to move forward. Again, delays cost money, delays cost momentum, delays cost a lot of things. And I think that there is a general sense that we want to solve at least one of these vexing problems within our respective lifetimes.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could direct a question back to Councilor Connell. You just mentioned one of these projects is imminent. Could you share something that I don't know about? What is imminent?
Here you go.
Mr. President? Yeah. Tomorrow, no. Strike that out today. Imminent is a relative term when we're talking about things that happen regarding parking and the possibility of hotel development. I've been here since 1979, and I remember the first headline I read in the Daily News, a former mayor, someone you might have known, was quoted in the front page of the Daily News: "If we don't solve our parking issue within the next 5 years, Newburyport will go to hell in a handbasket." And here we are, 30 years later, and we still have not addressed that problem. So imminent is, again, don't hold your breath.
Ask a native.
You'll expire. But some things are at least at a sufficient level of maturity that it would not surprise me if within this coming year one or both of these proposals comes forward. And I have no specific knowledge, and that was the point of your question that I can share with you. I don't have any specific knowledge. I'm the mushroom.
Just a point of clarity here, that there was no vote by this council to approve a garage at the Titcomb Street lot. There was none that I know of. I mean, it was stated in here, and now it's like repeated as fact.
1 years ago, they defeated 7-4.
There was also a vote that I think passed in the 6-5 range that was to allow the MVRTA to move forward with exploration of various parcels around the downtown that might be a parking garage, but it was MVRTA centric. And we were the tag-along. And Titcomb Street did fit all their needs. That has since gone by the boards. But there's been no discussion in this council or in this body about a parking garage for us. Just to make that clear.
I thank the councilor for the clarification. It was that vote of the Merrimack Valley Regional Transit Authority to which I was referring.
Section 6, dimensional controls. Councilor Jones.
This is where I shine. No.
Councilor Sullivan.
No.
Councilor Cameron.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
Councilor Cronin.
Yes.
Councilor Darabin.
Yes.
Councilor Harquist.
Yes.
Councilor Herzog.
No.
Councilor Bryan. Motion fails.
Just one more.
Now, this is
President?
controversial.
Which one are we on now? Number 7?
Pick a number.
Yeah. I move to take item number 7 out of
I'll
committee.
second that.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve item number
Second.
7. You're up, Andy.
This definition here that we're referring to is the definition of a corner lot and how one defines the dimensional requirements on a corner lot. You may recall a couple of years ago we had, there was some litigation. It was actually just predated my time here, but it was being wrapped up about the time I got here. Some litigation on Jefferson Street about whether or not the city had a clear definition for lot shape requirements. And so subsequent to that, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years later, the planning office and the planning board and planning and development subcommittee, we had worked together to adopt some changes that provided much more clarity for the lot shape requirements. What is the frontage length required? What is the setback required? on all sides, you know, the overall composition of the lot to make sure that development was fitting on normal sized lots and normal shaped lots as opposed to irregular things that a developer could just barely squeeze in. So having said that, we've already got an ordinance in place that's pretty clear. A proposal was brought forward or suggested that we modify it yet again to, in my opinion, make it less clear. And the reason for that is the proposal that you have before you, which I do not recommend. The planning board, I think, while there were some mixed feelings about it, decided not to comment on. And the ZBA chairman, on behalf of the entire zoning board of appeals, is also opposed to. The bottom line is that the current ordinance requires on those corner lots that the longest length of the lot line on one of those streets is the dominant or the primary front lot line. And you can determine where the rear line is by looking at the opposite of that. And that's the way the current ordinance is written. It's defined by the longest length of one of those corner lot frontages. The proposal before you right now would revert that and change it to dimensional requirements determined by address. So on the corner lot, if a homeowner establishes their front address on X street or YZ street, the front yard is established just by their numbering their house on that street. And the awkwardness about that, I think, is less about what happens on that individual lot. What I think is concerning about it is what happens to the adjacent property owners, the abutters to that corner lot. Because if the property owner at the corner can define where their front address, and not so much where their front address is, but where their front setbacks and rear setbacks are, just by picking which street's going to have their address, that creates a situation where you could have an abutter who's expecting a 40-foot setback based on reasonable interpretation of the zoning ordinance, and then the property owner at the corner moves their address to the other street, and now they have a 10-foot setback. And they're very angry because they were expecting a certain dimensional standards to be applicable to that lot, and they don't get that. What they find out is that the abutter, this corner lot owner, can actually at whim decide where the dimensional requirements stand. And the way that the ordinance is written today, there isn't actually anything that would prohibit them from moving the address back and forth to essentially slowly add things onto the structure just by using those dimensional standards to their advantage. So I'm not in favor myself of making that change. I see the arguments on both sides. Certainly using address to define your frontage is an easy way for the layman to understand where your front address is, or where your front property line is. But for zoning purposes, to keep it clear for everybody what the dimensional requirements are, I think leaving it to the whim of somebody to decide where their front door will be by their address creates a lot of uncertainty, particularly for the abutters to those lots who should have a reasonable expectation of what the dimensional requirements will be for adjacent properties. And so I think we may end up having a lot more complaints. If this change were to go through, I think we'd have a lot more complaints from abutters going forward when they find out the dimensional standards they expected to apply to their neighbors no longer apply. So that is, for that reason, I do not recommend adoption of this particular amendment. Vote no.
This is Section 2 definitions, so-called corner lots. Councilor Jones?
No.
Councilor Sullivan?
No.
Councilor Cameron?
No.
Councilor Connell?
No.
Councilor Cronin?
No.
Councilor Darabin?
Yes.
Councilor Harquist?
No.
Councilor Herzog?
No.
Councilor Bryan? That would fail.
Not at this time, and thank you for your patience.
Come on, you're on a roll.
Okay, Cushing Park.
I will be. Yes, motion to remove item 6. Second. Aye.
Aye.
Motion to receive and file item 6. Second. This is just a request for Phil's Auto Repair. It's really directed at the police department, and we have no action to take on this. Aye. Yes, motion to remove item 4, 153, 155 State Street. Second. Aye. Motion to suspend the rules with your letter there from Councilor Earls.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve.
Second.
According to Councilor Earls, this is a loading zone right down near the Ipswich Bank area and the window store down there. This has garnered 100% support from the neighbors, and it's a loading zone for a half-hour drop-off and deliveries. It was 3-0 in committee.
It's to approve Section 13-171 service areas. Council Jones?
Yes.
Council Sullivan?
Yes.
Council Cameron?
Yes.
Council Connell?
Yes.
Council Cronin?
Yes.
Council Dervin?
Yes.
Council Harquist?
Yes.
Council Herzog?
Yes.
Council Bryant? Motion passes first reading.
Motion to remove item number 5, multiple sclerosis walk.
Second. Aye.
Motion to approve.
Second.
This is a walk we've had several years past. They stay on the sidewalk along the waterfront, down Joppa and up. We've never had a complaint about this group. Urge approval. It was voted 3-0 in committee.
Aye.
That is all.
Not tonight.
Nothing to report.
I just think it would be appropriate for the city council, perhaps through the good auspices of the clerk's office, to write letters of congratulation to the girls' soccer team, which won the state championship last weekend, and also to Nick Carlio, who was the all divisions state champion in cross country this past weekend.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Gavel, that's right.
There's some hoops at that hotel.